This video contains disturbing historical content that some viewers may find distressing. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. In 1945, over 50,000 Norwegian women faced a terrifying reality. What happened to them would become Norway's darkest post-war secret. Throughout history, stories of courage, dedication, and victory are frequently praised. Yet amidst the majesty of wartime bravery, there exists a hauntingly quiet chapter that is carved in the lives of Norwegian women who ventured to have relationships with Nazi soldiers. As German girls, or Tyskerjenter, these women and their children endured terrible misery and social disgrace. So join us as we uncover the untold tales of Tyskerjenter, their war children, and the lasting impact of these events on Norwegian society. But first, welcome to Through the Ages, where we uncover the darkest secrets of history. Subscribe for hidden history they don't want you to know. We expose the untold truths that shaped our world. Now, let's start. Norway, a country renowned for its neutrality and peace, was suddenly thrown into the chaos of World War II. On April 9, 1940, Nazi Germany launched Operation Weserübung, a military campaign that led to the occupation of Norway. Here, if we go a little back, in 1935, the Nazi regime introduced the idea known as Lebensborn, or Fountain of Life. This terrible scheme, which was headed by the cruel Heinrich Himmler, the chief of the SS, sought to increase the members of the so-called Aryan race. Lebensborn homes appeared throughout Germany under the pretense of racial purity. These were places where pregnant women, who were considered to be of superior race, were locked away to give birth. Fast forward to 1941, 1 year after the cold steel of Nazi boots trampled over Norway's lush lands. In the Scandinavian nation, the Lebensborn initiative flourished as some Nazis saw a chance to use Norwegian women to spread their Aryan views. Eventually, the unions between Norwegian women and German soldiers produced hundreds of Norwegian-German offspring. Pregnant women who were chosen on the basis of their alleged racial purity were provided with protection and assistance in order to give birth. Since the children they created were to be the state's property, the authorities also forced them to sign a paper surrendering any claims to the children. The objective was obvious: to strengthen the Aryan race with Nordic blood, guaranteeing that the child born within these walls would be trained with Nazi doctrine. Up until May 8, 1945, the nation was still ruled by Germany. The Norwegian people, especially women, were subjected to the harsh Third Reich authority during this time of occupation, which caused them much suffering, anxiety, and unrest. As the war ended, the fate of these women took a horrifying turn. While the majority of Norwegians celebrated the liberation in the spring of 1945, at least 5,000 Norwegian women were detained in about 20 internment camps throughout Norway for as long as 120 days. And due of their involvement with German soldiers, they were referred to as German girls or German whores. These women were depicted as prostitutes. They were seen as psychologically abnormal, as if they must have been insane to have a relationship with a German soldier. Even worse, the idea was that their body belonged to the nation, and the nation had the right to punish them. So these women had their heads shaved and got humiliated in public. They were described as ignorant and naive women from the lowest classes of society. Deprived of their honor, they were beaten and paraded through the streets. For instance, on May 13, 1945, about 40 young men from Gjelsås and Oslo pulled a 19-year-old woman from her house and chopped off her hair just because she served as a scullery maid for the Germans during the war and had dated a German junior officer. Head shaving was a symbolic punishment intended to identify these ladies as traitors. Moreover, the haircutting may be understood as a manifestation of one's own patriotism. By participating in the haircutting campaigns, people proved to themselves and others that they were true patriots. So the public embarrassment the women suffered was clearly an expression of the strong hatred and anger felt by the Norwegian people. But what happened next was even worse. The way these women were treated by their own neighbors shocked them deeply, as they turned their backs on the Tyskerjenter. Social exclusion and legal prostitution became the norm. No matter what the real reasons were for their relationships, they were rejected, harassed, and punished for what they had done. In many cases, these women were forced to abandon their families and neighborhoods, seeking refuge elsewhere to escape the constant attacks. Also, due to their associations with German soldiers, several of these women suffered legal consequences because of their past relationships, which were seen as collaboration with the enemy. They were put through trials and sentenced to prison. This increased their misery and left them with little possibility of acceptance or forgiveness. But that's not all. The German women were only punished by the general public. They were also punished by Norwegian authorities. Well, people were outraged because these women had been too close with the Germans. There was a strong public hatred towards them, and the authorities felt that something had to be done. Eventually, the Norwegian government's response made these women's suffering worse. The administration aimed to regain authority and rebuild national pride in the early aftermath of the war. As part of this effort, they implemented harsh measures against those perceived as traitors. Therefore, the Norwegian citizenship of the German women who had relationships with German soldiers was taken away, and they were deported to Germany together with their children, leaving them without a place to call home. They were interned in special camps while waiting for their deportation. This loss of citizenship not only stripped them of their national identity, but also left them without legal backing and aid. Also, the police, fronted by the head of the National Police and the Department of Justice, did also take part in an unlawful quasi-penal sanctioning of a defenseless group in society. Tyskerjenter were subjected to intense questioning. Apart from inquiries about German labor, the police also had concerns regarding the sexual lives of the women. According to the interrogation records, the ladies were often questioned about the number of times they had sex with German soldiers, as well as the number of German soldiers they had as friends and partners. In addition, their children, commonly known as war children, Krigsbarn, encountered unusual challenges. They were caught up in a web of social hatred that tightened around them as soon as they were born. They encountered pointed fingers and the sharp pain of loneliness. Their parentage, an indelible scar of war, made them enemies in the eyes of the others. The constant taunts and attacks they endured served as a reminder that they were unworthy in the eyes of a society that could not see beyond their birth circumstances. Hence, the shame and oppression their mothers faced was reflected in the fate of the war children. The majority of German-born children experienced abuse, disgust, or even rape as a result of their past. Others left Norway, such as ABBA's lead vocalist Anni-Frid Lyngstad, who was born to a German soldier and fled to Sweden with her mother and grandmother. Moreover, some of those who stayed at a Lebensborn home ended up going to mental hospitals and endured medical treatment until they reached adulthood. Paul Hansen, who was born in a Lebensborn home in 1942, said in an interview with The Independent in 2008, "I spent the first 20 years of my life in mental institutions just because my father was a German. We were war children and therefore must be retarded due to our parentage." Moreover, Bjorn, one of more than 10,000 Norwegians fathered by German soldiers, told, "A small brother and sister, 5 years old, were placed in a pigsty for 2 nights and 2 days. Then in the kitchen they were put in a tub and scrubbed down with acid until they had no skin left. So it is undisputed that the wounds from these horrifying treatments have affected their identities and experiences throughout their lives." Now, even though the Norwegian government apologized and paid compensation to the children in 2002, it has taken another 15 years for the women to get recognition. In 2018, Norway finally made amends by issuing a formal apology. Young Norwegian girls and women who had relations with German soldiers or were suspected of having them were victims of undignified treatment. Norway's Prime Minister, Erna Solberg, said, "Today, in the name of the government, I want to offer my apologies." Given that it acknowledged the wrongs done to these women and their children, the formal apology was a landmark event in Norwegian history. This recognition of the injustices done to the Tyskerjenter was a first step in the right direction, but it would never completely take away the pain and misery that they had gone through. Additionally, the apology was backed by initiatives to help and compensate the remaining war children in Tyskerjenter. These initiatives included restoring citizenship to people who had lost it, providing access to counseling and support services, along with monetary compensation. even if these actions couldn't change the past. They show a dedication to admitting and correcting the wrongs done to these people. If we talk about the impacts of the past events, the haunting echoes of the past still echo through the streets of Norway, a nation forever marked by the shadow of its wartime history. As the years have passed, testimonials from survivors have started to shed light on the long-lasting effects of their experiences. Their voices, which were previously silenced by shame and terror, now provide insight into a troubling period of history. Through their words, we gain more understanding of the pain and strength that define their lives. The trauma they faced left an eternal mark, not only on their own lives but also on the historical memory of Norwegian society. The loneliness and resentment they experienced are an unsettling reminder of how damaging oppression and hatred can be. Therefore, it is obvious that the mistreatment of Norwegian women forever altered them and the society. These women endured continuous harassment and exclusion, were called traitors, and suffered unspeakable humiliation. Their children were also born into a world that disapproved them. Their stories bring to attention the hidden truths of history, the severe wounds caused by discrimination in society, and the long-lasting effects of trauma on successive generations. Now, if we ask you what shocked you the most about this hidden history, share your thoughts with us in the comment section below. Also, to uncover more dark truths they don't want you to know, make sure to hit the subscribe button.